Hey everybody, welcome back to Stone Face Reactions. I'm Griffin, that's Theta down there, and we are reading some Vanadis arts today. So we have a comment here today, let's see what people got to say. We have Emerit, who says to Ractus, thank you very much for featuring my comment on your videos. I am very flattered and appreciative by your kind gesture to devote time to having discussion regarding my comments. I enjoyed all your insights and opinion regarding the potential fates of Q and Vilda, as well as your perspective about how you believe the manga might have a more tragic ending. I still want to hope that there will be a happy ending, but given the history surrounding Gundam, I wouldn't be surprised if the manga went with a more darker ending. Anyway, on to my thoughts for this chapter. And Theta, which chapter would this be particularly for? 4?
Yeah, should be four.
Gotcha.
Unless I was horrible at this and forgot it all at
Whoop.
one time. I guess
Uh,
we'll find out by the reading.
This chapter took an unexpected turn, but not an unwelcome one. We are introduced to a new Gundam pilot, Yoshika, and a new Gundam, the Gundam Lifrith Anakata, as well as a new mysterious character, a doctor who seems to be supervising Yoshika, as you pointed out in your commentary. Perhaps the doctor is a part of the group originating that Vilda is fleeing from. Perhaps we will get more answers in future chapters. Anyway, this Gundam comes across as very deadly, destroying the enemy combatants with utter ease. Yoshika seems quite capable as a pilot, and she is able to tolerate permit score without harm to her herself. I wonder if she has a resistance to permit. Yoshika seems very interested in pursuing Kyu, given her eagerness to meet up and catch up with him, and she seems to have familiarity with Kyu, going off first impressions. She seems to have a respect and admiration for him. She calls him by a nickname QP, and comments about how she cannot break things quite as well. I wonder what connection she has with him. I'm curious to see if whether she may be a potential love interest for Q as the story in manga develops. It's too early on to jump the gun on making that kind of prediction. I think we'll have to wait and see what types of interactions Yoshika has with Kyu before making that kind of determination. Whatever connection she might have with him, I do agree that she seems to be set up to play the role of antagonist. I'm eager to see where the story goes from here. You seem to be very excited for the next chapter, so I'm looking forward to that video. Thank you again for your coverage.
Any thoughts on that paragraph?
So, you know the relationship Sonic and Amy have, right? In the Sonic franchise. I'm almost imagining that now.
She's
Just as
Princess
a
Amy, right?
hilarious point. Say again?
She's the princess, right?
No. Amy is the pink hedgehog girl who lusts after Sonic
Oh, then no, I didn't. I'm really
with
only
the hammer.
familiar with Sonic Sat AM. Who is the princess then?
Is it like Sarah or something? I never watched like the Sat AM stuff, so I got no
Oh,
idea.
it was the best one. So,
I played
um,
like 3 Sonic games total, everybody.
well, I played maybe the first one a little bit and didn't like it,
Hmm.
so I didn't. Um, yeah, I mean, I think even this kind of goes along with the thought process that this character knows Kyu,
Hmm.
so it's kind of like it seems like it'd be foreshadowing a hidden backstory that we don't know about.
I think the thing we fundamentally need to see at some point is Kyu lamenting about damages that he's caused, that he knows that he caused. But we just don't really have that yet. But other than that, uh, I am excited to see more of Yoshira interact and probably start forcing some of this backstory on us. I think that's going to be great.
So, like I said, they're gonna show up in the town. All right, okay, gonna drop the pretense now because I realize I can't say anything without. We're recording this after the fact, and we recorded the whole episode. Forgot to read the comment. And every time I go to say something, I realized, oh, I'm about to make a reference to everything we've just done. There's no way. I've fucked this up too many times. So, yeah. All of the theories that I've said, I'm still going to put this at the start of the episode. You're just going to be super confused now. Uh,
Sure.
all the stuff I said, or will say, about you having a mystery past where they're actually the destroyer, that Griff thinks is a third profile,
Mhm.
I think lines up with this line of thought. And eventually I will say something about a picture being ripped off a wall and a town being burnt down. And I think this is going to be the mystery figure that does it. It's not going to be some ominous adult. It's going to be a little child with a smile on their face commenting about how everything burns so well.
There you go. And to continue the comment, I just wanted to say that with this chapter, it seems the door has been opened to the potential possibility that more Gundams and perhaps more Gundam pilots could be introduced within the story of the manga. If memory serves me correctly, I believe you pointed out such an observation. In any case, I wanted to know, do you believe the manga could eventually expand upon the roster of characters we could potentially see in future chapters? Do you believe we could eventually see an expansive cast characters similar to what we saw in the main anime? Prior to Chapter 1, I was of the belief that the manga would focus solely on Q and Vilda.
Prior to this
But
chapter.
now, yeah.
I don't
But
think I
now
had
with
any thoughts prior to chapter 1.
yep. But now with this chapter and the introduction of Yoshika and another Lifrith Gundam, I can't shake the potential that we could see more characters introduced in the manga. I would to hear your thoughts. Also, what do you think of the potential future of Yoshika? Do you think she could be swayed to become an eventual ally of Kyu and Vilda? Do you think that she could become a future lover of Kyu? Or do you think that she will stay as a potential and long-running antagonist? And do you believe that she will have a happy ending or a tragic ending at the conclusion of the manga? Something tells me you might lead more towards the latter. But I would still enjoy hearing your thoughts. Thank you again for your coverage of the manga. Thanks for all the comments.
Possibly. No. Yes. The worst way to do
Just
this,
throwing
right?
out random answers.
No, I'm literally answering them in order. Do you think she could be swayed to be an eventual ally for Q and Vilda? Possibly. If I'm right, to a thing that you'll hear later on in this episode. So it's a confusing way to do this. If I'm right about that thing, then possibly yes, they could be swayed. If that thing does not exist and they're just an independent operator, then no, probably not. Do you think they become a future lover for Q? Honestly, I don't want to think about it. They're children. Okay, I understand that there could be like
You can have child romance, it's fine. They're the same
childhood
age.
infatuation, sure. Like, I'm sure that happened in Rugrats once or twice, but I don't really want to think about it. Just one of the things. That's all. I'll leave that as a hang up. Do you think she will stay as a potential and long-running antagonist? 50-50. If it happens, I'm down for it. Something in me, that evil bastard that lives inside of my head, wants them to die, and I want them to die in front of Kyu and have it be something that they regret for the rest of the manga. Some dark turn twist that has to leave the childlike innocence of Kyu well and behind. Like maybe they're forced to kill this character.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe a happy ending or a tragic? Do you believe she will have a happy ending or a tragic ending at the conclusion of the manga? I just told you I wanted her to die, so maybe just leave that on that one. I mean, I don't want her to die, but I think it would be an amazing turn for Kyu's storyline to be faced with such a thing, as opposed to, again, their childlike innocence. And what do you think, Griff?
Yeah, to go ahead and cover my thoughts I've been holding here. Let's just let those go. I don't think we're gonna get like an all-star cast kind of deal here. I think our focus is like very laser pointed directly at Kyu and Vilda, and I don't think we're gonna stray too far. We have characters who support around them, but not characters who seem like they're gonna have their own story. At least that's what I get from 5 chapters so far anyway. I feel we're gonna stick very close to them. We're not gonna go too far beyond what we need to explain them. And I think given that, the thing that makes the most sense here is probably that we will end up with a tragic ending for Yoshira here. At some point, there's 2 options. Either one, she's a first arc antagonist, where she's here to lay the groundwork for what the greater force is. She is a representation of it, and she will be initially overcome because of how she feels for Kyu. I believe that will end up being the undoing, and of course, that will be inevitably tragic. And then we'll get another villain who is far less concerned about the safety of Kiyu afterwards. The alternative, of course, is that she sticks around throughout the entire thing, in which case, I'm not really sure what that would look like yet. Where we constantly have a character who really, really cares about Kiyu, but maybe doesn't quite understand the context for which she's fighting. Where Yoshia doesn't empathize or care for the things she's killing, and it's just like, come on, just come back to the job, Q. It'll be fine, and then we could be friends forever, and we'll be happy. And given the way Q interacts with people, engages with them, empathizes with them, that would not be a thing that they would want. So that's how I could foresee a longer term version of that story arc, I think. But the likelier thing is, of course, we'll get the short version of it. That's my impressions right now. But we got plenty of time to be surprised, right?
But Griff, will they become lovers?
Will they become lovers? They ain't living that long. That's my that's my thought. They ain't living that long.
It occurred to me I didn't answer the all-star cast thing.
Mm-hmm.
You've obviously given the why not, so I guess my opportunity as devil's advocate to pull the why would.
Sure thing.
Farscape Season 1, you remember that?
Nope, didn't watch it.
Didn't watch Farscape. Doesn't like modern media. Got it. Alright.
Yeah. You found me out. I'm a hipster.
Basically, they encounter a series of villains that they turn into allies to beat the big villain at the end, where they all come together as a group. So, why not everybody that they've met along the way that they turn into allies comes back at the end to be, more characters? And obviously, this is a running series. We're going to encounter more people. It wouldn't be as interesting, I don't think. It was just Kiyu and Vilda talking to one another constantly. No outside.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely getting more characters, but we're not getting more focal characters, I think. We're getting support.
I think if we knew how long this was supposed to run, we might be able to tell, if this is a 36 to 48 chapter, and we're only 5 chapters in, we still have the opportunity of, I guess, 12? 12 is a good volume size?
Mm-hmm.
Within the next 7 chapters to build up an actual cast to carry us through. But if they don't do that, then I guess I would side with the not having a larger cast.
Yep. So, I think last time, Theta, we took a little detour and got to see some action out of the swamp with a mysterious new Gundam and their pilot.
We assume it's a swamp.
It looked pretty swampy to me. I know my swamps here, alright?
There are a variety of different landmarks, which may contain watery terrain, plus, a lot of foliage, and whatnot, that are not just swamps.
Perhaps a marsh, or a wetland, even.
Mm-hmm.
But,
many Floridian would take homage with what you've said.
Right. But essentially, that was an introduction to another character. We're returning to the action today, so more importantly, what happened prior to that, of course, is that Dr. Kiyu and Vilda stopped by a demolished town, met the residents, and began assisting them in various ways. Dr. Vilda providing medical assistance, and Kiyu eventually deciding to try to put together a giant robo-doll. I think as they've described. There, you got anything to add to that?
I thought you were going to keep going, and then you paused for a moment, and I thought, you're waiting for me to... It's like, why?
Well, I mean, those are just kind of the big points. We're in town, everyone is trying to help somebody, and...
I do appreciate that your last time on is to skip the actual last time and go back to chapter 3. I don't think you mentioned it.
Because it feels more relevant to today.
I don't think you mentioned it, but we're on chapter 5 today. And
that's right.
you've decided the last time was so worthless that we're just going to skip it and refer back to Chapter 3.
Well, like I said, I think Chapter 3 is more relevant to 5 here because that's where we're picking up from. Chapter 4 was sort of like an intermediary introduction to a character kind of thing. It doesn't immediately follow right now. We want to know like what's happening to Kyu and Goga.
I would argue that perhaps it does immediately follow. And I don't even mean that in a 4 is before 5 sense. I just mean that we know that our characters are running away from something. So literally, this could be a case of it follows.
Right. So then what would you go ahead and bring up about the previous chapter then for us to remember as we go forward?
I mean, they're setting up for a festival. We know that.
Yep, that's right. And I believe Dr. Vilda was recently introduced to the town leader or elder. I'm not exactly sure what his official position was again.
They call him boss.
Who has boss, there you go. Who has gunned legs that don't work and need fixing.
Confusingly, actually, I think they call one of their own guys chief, and then they call that guy boss.
Oh gosh, we're right in a pure King Bradley situation again, huh?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I could be getting it wrong. This is like a commenter situation, really, unless... Because we're not going to go back here in the moment. We've done all of our research for the day.
Next, you're going to tell me, like, from Ghost in the Cell, Kusanagi's first name is actually Major.
I don't know. I've never watched Ghost in the Cell.
I can't believe it, me. I'm going to be mispronouncing stuff. Anyway.
Well, it's the one thing I've got on you, Griff. If you're going to be right about everything for the commenters, I'm going to get you into one territory. The recording is going to prove me right. I've watched a lot of Ghost of the Shell, though. So.
Right. So I think we got a general idea of what's been happening now, right? We got the two in town, we met a mysterious Gundam, and now we're resuming their shenanigans in town. So, Theta, why did you go ahead and take it away, and let's see what's in this chapter.
Well, of course, I always skip over the title page because probably what's going on here in the edit is you've been looking at the title page this whole time while me and Griff have been talking. So let's move on right to the first actual page of content. We start Chapter 5 with a news montage that seems very much in the spirit of the prologue. I'm certain we've seen the guy in the center middle panel before in a previous manga issue, if not the prologue itself. As it's presented to us, the top half of the page shows an INN broadcast depicting the protests over the use of the gun format, while the bottom half of the screen shows a group of uniformed officers and a man in a business suit watching said broadcast in shock.
Yeah, so I believe what we're seeing here is Ox Earth, and we'll be getting a little bit more of them in a moment, but I do always appreciate just like the sign, Gundams shook my child's life or something. They keep going back to the same thing. This is in-universe B-roll here at this point, right? They just have that as stock footage anytime they talk about Gundams on the news now.
I want to tell you, Griff, it's only the first page and you've already rocked me.
Oh?
I did not consider for a moment that these people might have been Ox Earth.
Oh my gosh, you did. Okay, well, now you got something brand new.
I realized that they were wearing like officer suits, like military suits and everything. Never occurred to me. I mean, like, we know that these are the same people from Chapter 3. Mm-hmm. Like, headband guy just doesn't not wear a headband. But never occurred to me that they could be Ox Earth.
I got more evidence for that in a future page, so let's go ahead and go on to the next one, since we have mostly just surprise faces here.
On the next page, we appear to return back to a flashback of the man Vilda was aiding at the end of Chapter 3. The officers and suited individuals surrounding him as he's being wheeled somewhere. The narrative being pushed being that even gunned medical technology is being criticized and earning the same ire of the weapons tech. We end with the old man in bed, just like we left him chapters ago, as the narration notes that because of all this, they can't even get gunned prosthetics serviced. It took me multiple go-overs to fully understand what was going on and the transitions happening across this page. The perspective angle on the guy in the suit next to the man in the wheelchair makes me think he must be on his knees next to him, with the larger man behind him helping him up. I'd assume he's offering the old man comfort, given the narrator's words, but the next panel is clearly him being restrained by security forces, likely meant to denote the fuss he's making at the fact that they won't try and fix the old man's gun prosthetics, which then leaves him in the state we saw last time, as per the final panel.
Right. So I think it's that like intermediary here, the second one, that made me think, oh right, this is the arrest of Vox Earth we're going over, and Boss was there, and this is their perspective of that incident. But I guess also like, no, this is also them like trying to go and get assistant for Boss, raising a Boss, getting kicked out, and then he's just stuck in bed. Also makes sense. Maybe I was misinterpreting that then.
Well, yeah, because it looks like it's just like the front desk of a hospital. And that looks like a security guard clearly restraining him. We know that when Oxearth went down, it was very violent. We've seen the full body combat suits of the people that went in. So, very much I think this is just a hospital and this guy is complaining to try and get help.
Right. So got a bit of our backstory. How about the next page?
Which brings us to the next page, and it's been almost 2 months real time since we've read the last 2 chapters, so it's taken me this long to recognize that the guy in the suit was actually the main guy from before who was telling them everything. Makes sense in hindsight. Just like before, he's explaining to Vilda that the old man is their boss, he's important to them, and that she is the only person that can save him. Without so much as a word, she appears to just rush out of the building they spent all their time carrying that old man's bed into.
Right, this is our preamble to more Dr. Vilda drama, but of course, the fact that she's walking out at all without saying a damn word, she's already going through this. I don't think there's much for me to say on this panel. It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Alright. Stopping dramatically out in that open area between all the buildings, she announces that she can't save him. As everyone looks on in shock, she grasps her hand to try and stop it from shaking, explaining that a secondary illness has taken hold since the prosthetic's connection was severed. She can fix the prosthetic, but it is all she can do.
Right. So I definitely love the little pose of like looking away with like her lab coat starting to flare up in the wind, and then her dramatic like holding her shaking hand and everything. But you know what strikes me as the funniest thing? The ellipses exclamation mark expression of the guy on the left side of the second panel. He's opening his mouth in shock. He's saying something, but it's just ellipses.
Well, no, I think it's meant to indicate he's not saying anything, that he just mouth agape.
Right.
You know, you're so taken with shock that you want to say something, but nothing comes.
Right, it's just such a bold exclamation for it. It just seems it strikes me as a little funny compared to the very seriousness of literally everything else happening.
I mean, I took it as like the whole group, not just that guy, even though he has his mouth open.
Yeah, that's fair, that's fair. They are a little bit stunned to silence here. They're taking it very stoically.
Alright. Next page. In almost a mirror panel, we get Vilda's dejected words as she tells them that alone wouldn't be good for his future. Where Vilda's handshake was given in a negative context, we then see the chief bawling. I'm going to call him chief from here on because I think he's chief.
It's all good.
Just clarification. Balling up his fist in what I can only take as a resignation or desire to do something. He tells her that that is better than doing nothing, and that they already know the president didn't have much time left. But if he could just stand one more time, it would mean everything.
Right, yeah, this is of course giving the perspective of the people who are struggling with, incurable things. sure, you probably can't cure everything, but any benefit to somebody's life is usually pretty positive. Quality of life is what matters, right? At least from
In the
most
end,
people's
in the
perspective.
end, yes. When you've got nothing left but quality of life, that's the only thing left to matter.
Exactly. And of course, what he wants here ends up becoming relevant a little later, as we see as we go into sort of the Kiyu arc here.
Well, I will say I've written these things out to be only referential to the page and what came before it. I
Oh
don't.
yeah,
I
but
don't.
that's more me putting a pin onto it. This is what they want. Maybe we fulfill it later.
Yeah, we need a pin, but without the head of the pin just being your face. Maybe with the text coming off, put a pin in that.
Yeah.
All right. Next page. With the words of the chief stating how grateful the boss has been since getting gun treatment, we are shown another flashback in the style of The Shining. Zooming in on a picture with the entire group together, old man in the center in his wheelchair, we then see him talking to a doctor as, in as evil a frame as possible, the shadow of Dr. Cardo hangs in the window just outside.
Carnivu, do you have to just be ominous in everything that you do? Is this just we haven't really gotten like a full picture of Cardo at any point. We've never spent time with her because she's dead in every series already, right? Is this just like what she's like normally? She's just like slightly a bit of a creeper. And we're just overinflating that as we look through everyone's past.
I mean, we'll find out eventually. We can only deal with the information that's in front of us.
Right, yeah. But here we're gonna go ahead and see some gun treatment. Tell us what's next.
For some reason, I've combined the next two pages together, so probably because so little actually happens and I couldn't pull much from it. So I'm just going to say pages 8 and 9 for right now. Looking on, Cardo seems to watch as the old man tests his prosthetics out for what I'd assume to be the first time. The narration continues, saying that the old man was grateful to everyone, Vanadis, Dr. Cardo, and their ideals. We get another slice of Cardo repeating her mantra that Gund will become humanity's hope for the future, as Vilda repeats to herself that Gund represents hope.
Right. This is of course Vilda resolving her little turmoil here. That she's not just there to cure everything. She can go ahead and give them some kind of hope, even if it's, on her pragmatic prognosis, not gonna help the long term. Um, I think there's some balance there. I think ultimately he'll just need someone to push her out of her depressive personality when it comes to the actual realities of stuff happening. So it's probably good she took a moment to think and had a couple of people actually pushing and going, like, no, 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 really. Come on, let the old man walk again, please.
I mean, we don't know what she knows, right? They live in a future with new medical problems that we don't know about.
Right, that's true.
I mean, for all we know, she's like, yeah, I could make him walk again, but his butt'll fall off. I mean, we don't know, right?
And the old man's got cheeks now with those new robot legs. They are extra thick,
I was
man.
trying to think of like worst case scenarios, right? And it's like, well, his prosthetics are connected right there. Like, what would fall off right here?
Unfortunately, missing half your body is already the worst case scenario.
Well, no, because I think he could conceivably, if they hadn't disconnected the gun prosthetics, he could have kept living like that. But
Mm-hmm.
she's saying he's dying. That there's a secondary illness she can't do anything about. So
Yeah.
making him walk again, I was just thinking, well, we don't know the medical points about all of this. We're in the future with much worse medical conditions and better treatments. For
Mm-hmm.
all we know, he could be living in excruciating pain for the rest of his life if she turns the prosthetics back on.
But of course, I think on the next page we have our crew in chief, who have the best response to this. Go ahead.
Returning back to the present, the bandana guy that first found Vilda interjects to ask the chief what happens if boss can't be healed. He simply responds that even if it's not the best option, they can't say that for themselves. Gathering up one more time, heads bowed, they beg Vilda for help again. This time, we cut to a Vilda with her head raised as though she's she's regained her hope once again.
Hmm. But yeah, I think Chief's response here is probably the best response. You don't necessarily need the best option. You can uh what's the word? Yeah. You don't have to strive for perfectionism every time. They need a good enough solution right now.
Once again, it's medical. It's a medical problem. I think what you're referring to is like if you're building a house and all you have is half grade materials, and you're like, I would rather build my house out of perfect grade materials. It's like,
Right,
well,
and Vilda
you've
would
got
rather
what
be
you've
able
got.
to like hear
Again,
everything.
but again, the difference here is I'd rather not die in my house versus, well, if you're gonna die anywhere, might as well be your house. It's a very different take.
Look, we've made our house of asbestos already. The best we can do is put up some plaster on top of it.
On the next page, we get a double shot of determined faces as we see Vilda head on, then cut to Kiyu, who is carrying both halves of the doll in the arms of the GU.
Yeah, I think this is like a very good transitionary little page here. Just the compare and contrast between the two and putting us back into the
Well, I
action.
hope you enjoy it, because we're going to be transitioning a lot, apparently.
Oh boy, we're gonna be everywhere.
On page 12, everyone in town that was gawking at the GU before now seems to be rushing out behind it, following it to a giant tree on the outskirts of the town, as GU appears to be just toss the doll up against it. I say toss, as we get the impact lines behind the doll as it hits the tree. The GU's arms are extended in such a way as to not
Mhm.
express care. The Gundam then pulls out what must be the thickest ropes ever, given comparison to GU's size, as Kiyu announces that it is time to do this.
I gotta say, ominously approaching a tree with a whole bunch of rope like this, with a body like that, definitely a little bit dark. But, we know what mission Q is on. Q is trying to repair this, and they are setting it up.
It's also the odd state that the tree appears to be dead, while at the same time being taller than almost every building around. It's bigger than the multi-story GU.
Gosh, yeah, you're right. That is a amazingly huge tree, isn't it?
To be dead.
Hey, there was a war, maybe it just burned at some point. Still up.
Next page. Once again, we transition back to Vilda's work as we return to the transport vehicle and get to see how truly massive it is on the inside. Even the crew that was begging for help can't believe how much stuff fit inside the trailer. Gaping around the. Is it a medical bay or an assembly bay? It's got mechanical Waldos all over, but there's also a bed that looks like all of the places that I've ever got my PET scans done.
Hmm.
Just 10 times more roomy in the area that you sit in. Once again, it's like a coffin instead of a PET scan. So,
Hmm.
while Vilda is in the room with the old man getting things set up for his scan or rebuilding, she makes sure to tell the group not to touch anything or come into the room with them. We get a little comic relief from the original two, as one takes offense at the indication that they are germs, as the other accepts themselves for what they are.
Covered in germs, yeah. But I'm definitely with these guys. Like, oh, this is kind of crazy fitting all of this into a trailer and then dragging it around with them the whole time. But naturally, the first thing that comes to mind is this room exists for Kiyu, doesn't it?
Well, we know that.
Yeah. We hadn't seen this room before,
I
so.
think it's also pointedly just so much more high tech than anything they've got.
Oh yeah, this is definitely some fun juxtaposition between the like dilapidated buildings we've been seeing everywhere, and now space future technology beyond even what most of what we've seen the Spacians have in the rest of Witch from Mercury, right?
Well, I mean, essentially, we're post-modern, post-apocalypse.
Mhm.
All right, next page. Another transitional page where we begin to see Vilda begin to work on the gun prosthetics while at the same time seeing Kiyu failing to tie up the doll. The rope falling apart since. Sorry, my mind just blanked in the middle of reading my own words. The rope falling apart around it as the kids from before lament. Hopefully, this isn't a tangle of fate situation, indicating that both events have the same outcome, but only showing us one.
Uh, yeah, I think this is definitely specifically trying to draw parallels between the two, where they're both trying to rebuild a thing that is split off at basically the same point below the legs
Are you
and trying to
saying
rejoin them.
that the doll is some sort of metaphor for the old man? Or are
Very
you
well could be.
indicating that when they set this doll on fire, the old man is going to die of spontaneous combustion, like some sort of weird voodoo doll?
Now you're jumping ahead a little bit, but
I'm not.
yes.
We know the festival. They mentioned the festival last time. Next page. Looking down at his failure, Kiyu also laments about how hard it is to do things on a larger scale, thinking to themselves that being bigger isn't always better. You hear that, Tom Hanks? Q even has a moment's insight, noting that it's the Gundam that destroys things, but wonders how the Doctor would solve this. I just felt like it was a moment of expressed understanding that was distinct from things that we'd get from Suletta. Kyu understands that Geo tends to be something that breaks and destroys, a weapon, not a Gundam that heals, like Ariel or Vilda. Looking down past the kids, Kyu spots a bunch of loose materials and makes the thinking face, tongue out the corner of the mouth, and imagines splints and casts that they think they've figured it out.
I absolutely adore the fourth panel here with the hard at work thinking expression combined with the Dora the Explorer level of imagination.
All right, Griff
It's
thinks
such
that
like
Dora has
complete.
no imagination.
Well, no, that it is. It's specifically imaginative. This is a completely different art style in Key's head, right?
No? Well, I
This
guess as you mean, yeah,
is
I get
like
what
the
you mean.
fourth style in this entire series.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, I thought you meant it was like it was new. It's like no, every time Key's imagined stuff, it's always been like this. Actually no, I will disagree. Anytime Q is being like a little gremlin or a troll, they're drawn in that
Uh,
art style. So it just, I guess, occurs now that Q as a gremlin or a troll is just how Q sees themselves.
right. So let's see how our little gremlin does.
We then transition back to Vilda, hard at work. See the sweat drops? Operating the computer console so that the Waldos and scanners can do all the adjustments to the prosthetics, as we see with all the clear prompts on the readouts.
Again, we're continuing to drive with the parallels. So this page parallels the previous, where both are hard at work thinking how they're going to actually rejoin the thing.
I think I was taking a swipe at Vilda there. That she's so hard at work that she's sweating, while at the same time there's little mechanical doodads doing all the work for her.
Well, she's got like a big pad in the fourth panel. She is controlling these things directly. It's not a fully automatic
We
process.
have no
So.
idea because it's not an animated scene. For all we know,
Yeah,
she's
that's true.
tapping things so hard that she's sweating.
Gosh, imagine like pulling up your phone and just being like, complete Gundam surgery. But oh gosh, it's so hard.
Well, no, imagine doing something like exactly as you were there, so hard that you start sweating.
Hmm. Hey, I've sweated some games before. I imagine surgery is a little bit more stressful.
Next page. As both groups look on at the spectacles being performed in front of them, we transition back to Kiyu, who asks what the purpose of the man at the festival is, aka the doll. The kids excitedly respond that they burn it, which confuses Kyu. The expressions on some of the kids seems to read as though they don't know why either, but are just excited that it happens.
Look, I gotta be honest. If I was that age and I got to see something big burn, I'd be pretty excited.
If you were
too.
that age and
These
got
kids
brought
are
to
on point.
Burning Man.
Hey, you know, all of us want to burn something at some point.
Yep. Next page. On this page, Kyu seems to have an odd sense of understanding, taking up a calm and collected tone as they talk to the doll they are manipulating, telling it that everyone is waiting to see it burn beautifully. Apparently, this was all the motivation he needed to finally put it together, even getting it to stand upright in view of the tree. Sorry, in front of the tree.
Of course, like, about this point of reading is when I started thinking, it's like, yeah, okay, so they're burning a giant Gundam like this. Here we have another Gundam right here that Kyu's piloting. I wonder if Kyu was thinking about that parallel right there. That these people would probably be excited to see them burn.
Not a thought that entered my mind at all.
Well, we are going to see the reason for the festival very soon, I think, now that we have our fully splinted up doll.
We then pan over the cheering crowd as we get another emote from Kyu, who jokes about being way better at getting up than Vilda, a callback to the first chapter and third chapter where Kyu specifically had to debate Vilda out of bed. In our last panel, we seem to have moved the doll again, as it now stands in that wrecked area near the town's outskirts, no tree in sight, with the Jiu posing nearby. On the ground, Kyu is talking to the kids as they tell him how amazing he is.
I honestly, again, love the second panel of just how cheeky Kyu can be.
Well, I don't know. That's not cheeky. That's the flowery hearts motif thing that's always behind them when they're being like genuine and happy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you know, it's the facade over top the gently ribbing of Dr. Vilda here. That's what enhances the humor for me there.
All right. We then transition into the next page with Kyu saying he is the doctor's assistant because she will always help those in need. This, of course, brings us back to Vilda, who has finished the operation as the old man wakes up. His crew clearly waiting right there as they exclaim, "Boss!" at seeing him stir.
So, quick question. So, in one of the previous panels, we actually saw that the trailer had moved up to the building where Boss was, and was parked in front of it. And now we're back in the junkyard?
I don't recall seeing the trailer having moved. I saw that they went to the trailer.
Right. We never see a panel of the trailer moving, but the trailer is in different positions at different times.
When's the last time that we saw the trailer?
Several pages ago when they were picking up the doctor. It is page 13. Where you can see it in front of the building that Boss
Well,
is
here's
at.
the thing that we know that it's being driven by an automated Haru at the
Mhm.
very front. So I guess it's entirely possible the Haru is being told to continuously move. It's the only way that
Right.
explains this sort of shit.
I'm more curious why they would move it back to the junkyard, but I guess maybe Vilda's doing that so Kyu doesn't get
Well, we also
lost.
know that the place that they were before, I guess, where they picked up the old man, was
Mhm.
like the center of town, sort of kind of thing. So
Yeah,
the trailers, I mean, the truck is massive. Probably didn't want to just sit there blocking everybody forever.
right. Don't want to just block traffic.
Alright, next page. In this 3-panel spread, we see them helping him off the operating table and celebrating as he is able to once again move with his prosthetic legs again.
Yeah, this page is just good visual medium here. No one has to say a damn thing. We get everyone's expressions, like very well putting the entire scene together, with his rise, his excitement, and then followed by everyone else, of course, celebrating. this is just good art.
Alright. As the group celebrates, Vilda retreats back into her mind palace again, questioning if these happy faces are the testament of the achievements of Gun's medical efforts. We, of course, continue to have the shadow of Cardo in her thoughts. She appears in all of Vilda's good remembrances of what they've done, but I can't shake the silent, ominous depictions of her when she's not specifically being mentioned as some sort of foreshadowing of information we don't have yet. Coming back to reality, the chief guy offers to arrange for all the possible medical expenses to be paid, and asks how long they will be staying. Given the conversation they had before they found out Vilda was a witch, it's unsurprising that she gives them the side eye and says that she doesn't want to overstay her welcome. The chief suggests at least till tomorrow, to her confusion.
Right. They've come to accept Vilda, but Vilda, I think, still realizes that she's kind of on the run and also still has a mission.
Well, I mean, they had a long spiel 2
Mhm.
chapters ago about Vilda can only cause harm.
Yeah. But this strikes me mostly as Vilda trying to politely decline in general.
Like I said, I thought it was more of a swipe at the very public argument that they had in front of everybody in town.
Yeah, a little hard to undo that.
Alright, next page. Evidently, we then paused the conversation without explanation, walked outside and away from the doors of the trailer, squatted up again, then continued the conversation, asking if they could at least stay till tomorrow night, as there will be a festival. The chief then starts to explain that the boss's scars come from a war that engulfed the city, and how it was raised in fierce battles. I still have no doubt that these were the drone wars previously mentioned, and that the doll is a half-destroyed drone that they are, that they are Burning Manning in a celebration of their victory.
Right. Um, I do have a slight problem with the dialogue, the way they refer to the war and the battle, where instead of being very specific, they're being very broad and vague. And I mean, it's obviously because the author hasn't named them itself or doesn't want to reveal it to the readers yet. But these people were in it and know what it is, presumably, unless like they've lost all possible historical knowledge in the last 30 years.
I mean, it's very easily explainable by me. It's either one of two things. One, it's the drone war, which you would have to consider to people of the time must be like World War One, right? It's just
Right.
it was the war. We don't have to describe
Yeah.
it or anything. Everybody knows what the war was. Or it's two, it's a local conflict, which doesn't really need much explanation because the people here were part of it and we know what it was.
Right. If it was like the a big old war that was very important, like the drone war, yeah, why not the war instead of a war? So that's what gets me, but we'll probably get an explanation later. At least everything's still going along well.
Well, I guess from our perspective as the audience, we've only been told of one war, so we only
Mhm.
have the one reference to go by. Now, if there's been multiple wars, if you recall the very first chapter, where we had all those cities that we were like, I can't tell if this is a destroyed city or just a
Mhm.
very shadowed city. That
Right.
possibly, when it's talking about our the shakeups of the human race developing over time, that possibly we had a nuclear war at some point, and that's what it was trying to indicate to us.
Mhm. Yeah, and until they actually come out and say it, we just have to kind of watch things keep happening.
Next page. This page is filled with panning shots of the wreckage of the city, while the chief says that the festival is meant to commemorate the town's rebuilding on the same day it was burnt down. First thing, the panning shots don't do a great job of showing off the rebuilding efforts, but then we knew that from 2 chapters ago when we commented on how bad the place looked. Second, I think about right here is when it occurred to me that last chapter's enemy appears. Sorry, last chapter's enemy appears in last chapter. Of course, that's just stupid to say. Is probably going to end up showing off here and burning the city down again. Just seems like that sort of narrative loop that you wouldn't waste a Chekhov's gun on.
Right, tie everything together essentially is the idea here. Uh, and of course we have the cityscapes, the destroyed cityscapes again, which have like this hyper real feel to them. I still think these are photo manipulation at some point, right? They really gotta be.
What do you mean?
I mean, like just the way that they appear compared to like everything else. Like we've seen images like where we have Kiyu walking across them, and they're just different styles.
I don't know. Could be that might be different artists. Like the Gundams are drawn differently to everything around them as well. Well, in specific shots, they're drawn
Yeah, that could
differently.
also be fair. It could literally just be different people, and you just have one very dedicated background artist who's been doing buildings for quite a while.
Yeah, because you would have a different background artist to a character artist. Because I mean, that would be like the most. You imagine the faces being drawn this way, and that would be like so weirdly off-putting, or so very much more serious than anything else going on. If you had the same shading in the faces as you do these buildings.
Oh gosh, yeah. One last note is I was kind of looking at the last panel here while I was reading it going, these are some vaguely Native American coded decorations here, just like the vague style of it, right? So I just kind of like put that away in my head when it's okay, they just made something pretty, that's fine.
Yeah, put a griffin-shaped pin in that.
And then we pull the pin right out next page.
We then move on to what seems to be that very celebration, as we get a transition from day to night with an abundance of people in the streets. Vendors appear to be selling goods, and people seem to dress up like Native Americans and dance around a fire. I guess if we are right about the area this takes place in, at least native populations make sense. I just don't know anything about traditions and customs to say if this makes sense at all, or if it could even be considered offensive, considering cultural depictions of some people across anime and manga.
This is just what the Japanese think all Americans look like, you know?
Well, I mean,
This is us, baby.
my very first thought was, I can't remember the band. You know the music video, "Do the Evolution."
Nah, I don't think I've heard of it.
Um, I mean, it goes through a lot of shit. Basically, it's like death is dancing with us, and it starts off with like cavemen killing each other, and then just goes to like World War One, World War Two, people like trapped in cubicles with like VR helmets, forced to do work, and like it's just a sea of cubicles, and then printing babies, and it's just
Oh, so
humanity.
Facebook offices
The
got it.
evolution of humanity from all of our worst aspects as viewed by the personification of death. And in one of those, it goes from like an Indian war party dancing around a fire, like to a bunch of KKK members dancing around a fire. Again,
Oh
it's
gosh.
supposed to the worst aspects of us. It's a great song and a great music video, but it
But at
immediately
least
made
over
me
here.
think of that.
Yeah, but at least over here looks like everyone's having fun. They're having a good time. They're dressing up, they're partying, they're eating food. And the final one, the entire city is lit up right now.
I mean, just because they're having fun doesn't make it a great thing. A bunch of insensitive pricks doing blackface and then having fun doesn't make it good.
Ah, yes, we're in California, but you see the only survivors of the war come from Orange County. Oh no.
Once again, it's still just supposition that we think we're right about where it is. I have no idea. We could be in Asia for all I know.
I would be even more confused if so. I would be so confused if like our Spanish idea panned out and this is the way that they celebrate. Like what's even going on then?
You'll remember that there's Native Americans in Dragon Ball, a place that
Yes.
has no America.
They don't have an anything there. They have a lot of weird parallels.
They have no
They have a
parallels.
Soviet Union, man. Come on.
A dog is president.
Goku beats up the Soviet Union,
No, he
alright?
beats the Red Ribbon Army, which is no parallel.
But next page.
We then return to the doll everyone is planning to set on fire, with Kyu evidently taking some honorary role in the proceedings. We can see that the doll has been erected on a platform and that burnable slats have been placed around its feet, with people standing around it ready to go. I would assume this is the area Kyu is telling everyone that they got this from.
Yeah. I definitely like this little setup here. They definitely have done well, like putting like this is the centerpiece of the entire party. But another thing I like is that we've had like the Japanese automatopoeia show up a good number of times for like various bits of the celebrations or like applause or astounding here. And even though like obviously I cannot read it at all, it's very clear what noises are being made.
It just occurs to me now that this is also very stupid.
Oh yeah.
Okay, how far do you think the giant object that they plan to set fire is from all these burnable buildings?
Given the size of the people there, I'd say like maybe 10 meters on either side.
Well, I mean, the height of the thing itself is already well above every building around it, which means, I don't know. You heard of this thing? I don't think they call it wind. It's already above the windbreak line, which means that it's going to be catching more wind than anything else. Which means as the fire goes up, it's more likely to blow in whatever direction the wind is blowing.
It's okay. Kyu's a highly trained professional when it comes to demolition, right?
All right, next page. Immediately, I'm proven wrong as we see that Kyu. Sorry, that refers to the something else. Obviously, not our previous conversation. Immediately, I'm proven wrong as we see that Kyu is actually climbing up the doll's frame, carrying materials up to the doll's head, which he ties around the frame in order to give it hair or ears via tree
Horns, maybe.
branches. What's that?
Horns, maybe even.
Yeah, could be anything. And a face via cloth with stuff drawn on it. The crowd seems to cheer at this, and when Kyu climbs down, all the kids gather around him to ask him questions and let him know how cool he is. He then lets them know that he's used to stuff like this thanks to the GU, and it's all part of his training.
Yep. So, first thing, of course, obviously, Kyu is pretty used to climbing up Gundams. That makes perfect sense. But does Kyu explicitly have super jumping here?
Why?
That's at least a couple of stories per jump right there.
We don't actually see Kyu jump anywhere. Oh, never mind. You're talking about first frame.
Yeah, first panel, first panel.
Well, it actually threw me off because every time I look at it, I just see Kyu down at the knee and never pay attention to everything at the top.
And you gotta follow the motion of the panel, man.
I mean, for all we know, this is like family circus lines. You know, the lines of the kid going around the neighborhood doing all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
We just assume that because he's at point A and point B and there's a line between the two, that's he just got there somehow. For all we know, Kyu jumped, grabbed that bar, shimmied up the bar, and then got to the thing where they landed.
Right. But I guess it's always a thing in the back of my mind that, I wonder if these Gundam pilots we keep getting are physically enhanced. Uh, but also I'm having Wicker Man vibes here, where I'm just waiting for someone to, like, pop up and say, it's like, alright, Kyu, now you get inside of it. Pilot the doll as we burn it.
Well, do remember that Wicker Man is also filled with sexual molestation, so maybe don't bring that into our thing. It's filled with children. We then immediately go into our first two-page spread this chapter, setting fire to the base of the doll. We see it catch fire in an ominous shot that peers up from below the cheering and dancing crowd up at it. I get the sense from the way the figures are being shadowed and the way the panel is tilted at almost a Dutch angle that the scene is meant to be otherworldly in some regard. If this was animated, it might be easier to tell, such as the illumination could be shadowing the figures given where the light is coming from, but there is just an overwhelming sense of something other that I feel when looking at this panel.
Yeah, I think it's like the combination of one, the craziness of the party, which is being portrayed, because everyone's obviously having a good time here. They're excited. This is the best things happening all week for them. But also, you're right, like, the way the fire is silhouetting it, the way it's supposed to look like this dark, ominous enemy robot. That's the entire point. That's why they're burned down, right?
I do appreciate you keep defending anything on the pages. They're having fun.
Well, look at that. One of them's like literally jumping into the air. It's great. They're having a great time. He's guy in the corner is like jazz handing. It's great.
It just feels like the energy being portrayed of this party is moments away from one guy turning around and ripping his own face off. You know, like a scene from. Uh,
From face off.
no, actually, I'm trying to think.
Where you take his face off.
Horizon. Something Horizon. What's the name of the movie? I'm trying to remember the one where the ship goes out and it disappears for a number of years and it just reappears. Event Horizon.
Oh, there you go.
The message they send for help, and it turns out they're actually like ripping their faces off and pulling their eyes out.
Jeez.
I guess you haven't watched the movie.
No, I haven't.
$60 reward tier. All I'm saying.
But as we're about to declare on the next page, this is actually literally just Burning Man.
Our next page seems to pull back from the immediate celebration, showing a much calmer section of the crowd, as well as an oversized shot of an overhead shot of the doll, catching fully on fire, as the more immediate group of people surrounding it pulls back to a safe distance. Vilda is still with the group she's helped, but has gone back into her bandito disguise as she watches on, questioning why they would celebrate their town's rebuilding from after having been burnt down with more fire.
Right, we're having our casual conversation here, but of course I love Bandana Guy. He's just like Burning Man, yeah.
I guess it just goes back to show that nobody is culturally sensitive in this show. We have a bunch of people dressing up like Native Americans. Vilda is once again repressing the Mexican population.
She's just enjoying her outfit, really. I love Corn Guy in the top left of the first panel. He just really enjoying that corn. But
oh yeah, well I really like Drink Guy right next to Corn Guy, who's really enjoying that drink. What?
Yeah,
Griff?
look at him, he's chugging. I don't know. I'm sorry. I see something silly. Really I'm just like, look at that guy.
I really like Fist Guy on the opposite side of the page. Is really enjoying throwing his fist in the air.
But panel 2. Wait a minute. Hold up a second. In the last frame where we got a nice big long shot of everything, they were basically on a street, right? Now we're getting like this overhead, and they're like in a central boxed area.
Well, if you really pay attention to that last one where I was making fun of where close they were to everything, you can note that there are groups of people with ropes pulling the stage that the thing is standing on, and they've got groups of logs underneath the stage, so they're clearly rolling it through town. Your pointed reference to my making fun of them fails to denote that I was just making fun of bullshit at that time.
But no, look, they have buildings on all 4 sides. How do they get that in there?
You can't know that, Griff. You can't know that there's buildings on all 4 sides.
I can, because at the very top of that panel, you can see where the row of buildings is. You can see where the row of buildings is on the left. You can see where it is on the right, and you can see where it is on the bottom.
So you're telling me at the very bottom of that panel, you can tell that there's buildings there, even though that they trail off that, and you can tell on the right-hand side that those buildings go all the way up. There's not a street there, a logical street that connects everything.
Hey,
there could be a street. There could be a street at the bottom of the panel, and there could be a street on the right-hand side of the panel.
Actually, no, I do, because if we go back to page 26, we can see those buildings on the left and right, and that they do go out past the Burning Man on both sides.
What are you talking about?
Page 26, that's our other reference point.
That's clearly the street that they're bringing it in on. Again, if you look at the bottom of that panel, you can see that a person is instructing a bunch of people. Are those people or are those animals? I think those are animals. In fact, I thought they were logs before, but I think those are animals pulling it.
They're logs with horns.
That's hard to tell, especially when you're zoomed out as far as I tend to be when I'm looking at these things. But yeah, that's clearly the streak they brought it in on.
Right. So next page.
Next page. They explain that they are facing the flames in order to confront the scars in order to move forward, which sets Vilda up to analyze her own motivations as she rewords the city's inhabitants' motivations in her head, questioning if she is really choking. Questioning if she is really able to face the past, the curse. All the while, she's been standing out in front of the crowd in her bandito costume, staring up at the flames of their burning man.
Sometimes you just gotta gaze at the flames and do some deep introspection.
Yes.
Uh,
Sometimes you have to wear a culturally insensitive outfit while standing next to a fire. I believe it
Look,
was
they're
Hitler that
obviously in a
once
desert.
said,
This is perfect attire for it, alright?
yeah, never
But
makes
more
sense to me.
specifically,
Obviously, when you're standing in a desert, when it's super hot, it's best to wear layers.
yeah. But it does fit Vilda's depressive personality a lot here. Her little introspection. Maybe she can vibe with this. Maybe she too can overcome the past, but we're overcoming the present here. With Boss again. Who's out of his wheelchair now.
Is he?
Yeah, at the very bottom of the panel.
Oh, no, he's sitting on a thing. That's why I was confused. It's like, no, he's still sitting.
Yeah, he moved over.
Something you
We,
can do without legs, by the way.
we saw him standing before, but now he's sitting over there. He's still not perfectly mobile. He's still an old man.
And dying, as we know. Next up, the old man thanks her again, letting her know that it's been such a long time since he was last able to see all of this, and that it's all because of her, the doctor from Vanadis. Vilda once again sees the shadow of Cardo Nebo in the flames of the Burning Man, as she acknowledged that this is what they were aiming for. I don't know about you, but most of the time that you see the imagery of a person shrouded in flames, not the good guy. Vilda thanks them back, stating that the pleasure is hers, which is when Q rejoins the picture, rushing up with two meat en broche, meat en broche, but
I'm just gonna
saying,
call it kebab.
well, that's technically the cooking term for meat on a stick. Meat en broche, or specifically how you cook it anyway. But saying one is for her before slapping her in the mouth with it.
It is a wonderful little bit of comedic relief, and I love this little manga's comedic relief.
Well,
It's
if
just
you
so good.
see what I was talking about before, the way you were talking about how Q
Mhm.
imagines herself in her imagination,
Yep,
that's the same way she's drawn there in actuality. So the same thing, it's the same art style for whenever Q's being a gremlin.
the gremlin is coming. But to the serious part of it, so before I put a big pin into, hey, do we have like a parallel between everybody burning here? Is the old man going to burn too? Yeah, I think that is exactly where we've now landed the parallel. The book here has specifically drawn it out, put attention to it, and put the old man and the burning man in the same scene. Their lives are burning out. Kiyu's probably is too. And this is probably what has Vilda upset thinking about it. The next page.
Alright.
That's my perspective.
No, I just didn't see any upset in Vilda, so. Alright. Kyu exclaims how good the meat sticks are, and we see Vilda waving hers about as she eats it. We then suffer a moment of time paradox, as Kyu says that the festival was a blast, past tense, while holding a camera. Vilda agrees, while the same frame contains a picture that has been taken from the festival. If Kyu was taking the picture when she said it, then the festival should still be a blast, as you are still in it.
They've already put the picture on the wall. I assume that they took the picture during it, went out,
continued
came
holding
back.
the camera for a couple of days, then talking about the festival in the past tense.
Well, on one hand, he never lets go of the camera anyway, but two, they're in their chibi forms. This is just to tell us, the audience, that Kiyu is the one who took the picture.
All I'm saying is that either this is a grammatical mistake and they are still, in fact, at the festival taking the picture with the background being the picture that they took, or we're in a time paradox. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, I'm not done
they
yet.
on the road. Next page.
What do you mean next page? I'm not done yet.
Okay.
I was in the middle of telling you I'm not done yet when you interrupted. Time paradox, by the way. Final words. Anyways, the concerning thing for me from this last panel, I do not think that there is a... Sorry, my brain is just thrown all of a sudden. The concerning thing for me from the last panel is I do not think that is their picture wall. I believe that is the same picture wall the townsfolk had from earlier in the chapter, which means that they took the picture. Sorry, what?
You're right.
Sorry, my eyes are down here, so I thought maybe you said pause or something. Thrown off. That they took the picture and gave it to them, and they put it up on their wall of memories. It's cute and all, but the concern is that people are tracking down Vilda and Kiyu. How many chapters from now are we going to get a scene of someone ripping the picture off the wall and setting fire to the town, or interrogating one of the people we just met?
Oh gosh, you just laid it out. We're gonna see a future frame. Yeah, this exact picture, and it's going to be burning. They're going to burn the picture of the burning man.
Also, pointedly, Kiyu was the one taking the picture, because Kiyu's not in the picture. So why is Kiyu holding the camera and talking in past tense when
It's
she's
his
still
camera.
there?
He took the picture. He gave it to him, and now they're leaving.
He's currently taking the picture, which is the point of the picture, and Kiyu not being in it. Festival's wasn't a blast, Kiyu. The festival is still being a blast. Next page. And here we see the trailer back on the move again. Giyu is back in its holding container, and Vilda is in the operating room, apparently giving Kiyu a scan now.
Right, as I was proposing before, this room existed for Kiyu, and now here we are using it for its intended purpose.
Well, I mean, it's what we're using it for now. I don't think it was meant for Kiyu to begin with.
I'm pretty sure it's why they hitched it to the trailer. That's all I'm thinking.
Right, well, yeah, kind of like why the Doctor stole the TARDIS, right? Because it was what he could use at the time. Well, no, I mean to say that the TARDIS was for something else, not just for the Doctor. The same way that this was probably for something else. We stole it for Kiyu.
Right.
Alright. As Vilda watches Kiyu in the table, or I should have said on the table. I'm going to get Kiyu for grammar. I'm trying to get myself. As Vilda watches Kiyu on the table, she evidently is remembering back to the conversation she had with the chief, as she asks him about the Gundam sighting he had mentioned 2 chapters back. Pulling out a pad, he explains that he was desperate for any information on Gund, and noting how similar the thing he is showing her is to the Giyu. On the screen he shows her, it looks exactly like the Giyu, with its armed weapon destroying a series of buildings. In hindsight, it could even be the Giyu causing all that devastation at the place they stole those batteries.
No. No, I don't think so, but
Once
see what else we
again,
get.
Griff, you're operating with hindsight, whereas once again, I wrote these things down 1 page at a time.
Right, fair. So let's just go ahead and go to the next page and get that info.
I could hear the pause in your voice of how do I explain this without bringing up the future. On the next page, we get a zoom in on the Gundam as well as another shot of the destruction from the distance. The chief indicates that he doesn't know where the video was filmed at, but they say it might be a gundarm, using the old terminology for some reason.
Mhm.
Vilda doesn't seem to be triggered by any of this, so likely not the scene of their own carnage. But she does say that she's pursuing those rumors as well. I think this is just a circular way of indicating that she knows what is going on, and not that she's actually following this thing around. I say this due to the fact that we know that they are actively running away from something, and it feels more likely that this is the stuff they are running from, not pursuing.
Right, yeah, I think I'm in agreement with that. This is Vilda trying to be a little bit coy about what she already knows. And of course, in the last panel here, we go back to our medical laboratory.
Or operating bay, again, because it seems to be filled once again with Waldos for mechanical stuff, less so a medical bay.
Of course.
Opinion. Kyo then decides to ask Vilda about the scans she is doing, specifically if the thing inside him was made by her, then how come she needs to investigate it so much? Pointedly, Kyo is gripping his chest when he asks that, so no doubt about the heart motif. No doubt the heart motif is still going on. Vilda responds that someone else rewrote the code, so that if Kyo is more than 800 meters, about half a mile, from the Gundam, they will shut down, and that to disable the programming, she needs more information. So, basically, what I said before, when they were at the station, and she first told Kyo to stay within that range of the GU, the way she put the marks around shut down makes me think he really will die if he leaves that range.
It's definitely very interesting watching Vilda like trying to measure her language, saying the code is tangled and that Q will shut down, and then slipping up and just calling it a deranged program at the end.
Well, I
That they
think
are unable to fully hold in what they actually think about literally coding in an instant death to a child's heart.
Well, I think it's she probably finds it safe to say it that way because Kyo probably doesn't have much to go on with like programming language and whatnot. So to say the
Mhm.
programming is deranged is probably like gibberish for Kyo.
I feel that they are definitely emotional clues, though. But we'll get to there when they elaborate on it a little bit more. I
Well, I
think.
mean, I'll say it's to me it was a nothing sentence, so I didn't read anything into it. So it's not that I'm debating you; it's just my first thoughts on the matter that I didn't consider before.
Yeah, that's fine.
On the next page, Vilda then tells him to close his eyes and sleep, and it will all be over. To which Kiyu says the thing I just mentioned, to look after his heart, as he oddly falls asleep within seconds of being told to go to sleep. That seems like odd control over being awake, like something else is going on there.
Yeah, I wish I had that superpower. Can I get that? I love to just fall asleep when I actually want to.
Well, I mean, more so that it feels like it's much more artificial than otherwise, that he can take a command to go to
Hmm.
sleep, and then go to sleep.
It could also just be convenience, but the last
How is
panel,
that convenient?
yeah,
I mean, it's either
it's
that or
story
Vilda
convenience.
gave him an injection of something.
Child is sleepy. They're in the middle of the night. Child falls asleep. Just the way narrative sometimes
Well, I
goes.
mean, pointedly, that's not the case, though, because the panel before, Q jumped up and asked a question. Well, I don't know about you, but when I'm tired enough to fall asleep within seconds, I'm not leaping out of my bed.
So last question. So what's panel 3 supposed to be?
Panel 3. I don't know, Dreamscape?
Just the ambiance of the mind.
Well, I mean, if this was animated, right, does feel like that effect that you'd have if you were to like mimic sand dropping in front of a light source. So it's
Oh
like
gosh.
sand dribbling down and dropping
I
off
know
of
what all
something.
this is. This is all the dirt and Q's mega eyelashes finally falling down. Oh no.
Well, I was gonna say like Sandman homage, because the Sandman puts you to
Mhm.
sleep.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Which might actually heighten your impression of things where Q may be drugged up to fall asleep faster for the operation, or there's some other control
Yeah, if
involved.
that's something going on in Q's mind
Mhm.
to the sleep command. All right,
And up
next
next.
page. We then transition back to Vilda's internal monologue as she questions if what she is doing is right or wrong. At the same time, acknowledging that no matter what, she needs to keep moving forwards. We also see, for the first time, that Kyu has a fully gunned chest, at least, putting him on the level of the gunned photos we saw in Cardo Nobu's office during the prequel scenes. Specifically, it brings to mind the images of the see-through necks and backs that come up when she was talking about the future of humanity in space.
Hmm.
We also see that Kyu's heart appears to be full prosthetic.
Right, yeah. This level of cybernetics is fully integrated. The neck is cut off, every limb is cut off, and the chest. Yeah, no. Kyu lives only by technology at this point. There is no going back or alternatives to this whatsoever. Kyu needs gun technology.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pointedly, I'm referring to if you don't want to go back and watch the prequel, the end of the prequel,
Yeah.
the edit that they made for re-release, where the credits are going. There's literally scenes where you're circling around Carter Nobo's office, looking at all the pictures on the walls, and there's a bunch of them that just mimic this.
Mm-hmm.
We then go to a full page panel where Kyu is surrounded by nature and their chest isn't prosthetic, as though this is the imagined way things should be. Vilda continues on, saying the reason for moving forwards is to confront the one who made Kyu this way. Just more speculation from me, but the way Carter was constantly shadowed in every memory and thought, I don't think she died in the gunshot scene. I think she got co-opted and brought to some place where she was put in charge of new experiments, which created these child soldiers, possibly for Ox-Earth remnants.
You could say these are iron-blooded orphans.
We don't know that they're orphans, Griff. They could be child soldiers, but because they definitely are child soldiers, in that we saw one reporting with like a whole military motif across their chest, killing people, soldiers as well. But the whole orphan motif is we don't know what happened to their parents.
Right. But I think what I'm getting from this nature panel is that maybe even like the further chess modifications might be above and beyond what they were doing in the first place. That maybe either A, all those modifications are post the heart, and the heart was the original piece that needs to be preserved, hence like the light of the heart here. Or B, Vilda is like considering the heart itself to maybe be the curse
I
that
saw it
led
as
to all the problems
more
here.
of like an overall motif. Like I said, that surrounded by nature stuff, because we're constantly driving through the what appears to be the wasteland of the world, wreckage everywhere. It's all desert. Now, pointedly, that's not so bad if we're driving through the areas of the country we think they are, which are just desert. But
Yeah.
if they're anywhere else and the world is this wasteland of deserts, then that denotes something else and would make the fervent plant life around Q here more of a metaphor.
We've seen grass and trees in the series before. We know they exist out there,
We've seen
technically.
them specifically only in areas around places where people have
Mhm.
congregated, like that little base area. We saw
Yeah.
palm trees. Outside of that, it's been all deserts and wreckage.
Oh, carry on. I had no further comments.
Well, we started a little debate there, and you just like gave up immediately, so I didn't know what to do. Mind can't comprehend a non-argument.
Hey, until we see more, until we know more, we just see more of the desert as they go through California.
All right, here for your first. Griff has no further speculation on the series. Next page. With another transition, we go to another ruined city in the midst of a battle. Most of those cannon-mounted walkers appear to be firing across the city at a gundam that looks like the one from the recording. Is this just the events of that recording, unknown at that moment? We see from the radio chatter that an entire squad has already been wiped out, and that the Gundam prepping for an arm wrestling competition has no permit identification code.
Right, it is a mystery machine appearing here in the city to wreck things. Then we get our 2-panel spread, and guess what it is?
Sorry, I lost my mouse for a second. You ever do that? You have a white background on your white mouse, and you're just like, fuck, where the hell is the thing gone? Yes. In our last 2-page spread, we get a zoom in on the figure with Gundam's favorite catchphrase right next to it.
It's a Gundam!
Or at least in the follow-up confusion, they say to assume it's a Gundam and call for more backup. As the debris flying around it would indicate that it's tearing through the artillery like the Hulk does through tanks.
Oh, yeah. And of course, with our close-up, I don't think it looks any different than the GU in details. This could very well be it.
I will say that I do not remember the last time that the GU permit activated what its face looked like. So
we might not have actually done a full permit activation at any point yet.
our next page shows how agile the Gundam is as it leaps from building to building like a Golden Age Superman, tossing itself high into the air. The thing that stood out to me is that in the first panel, its giant extra fist is mounted to its back. Then in the second panel, you can see the two parts separate as it gets ejected off of its back to shove its normal arm through, mounting the big O fist onto its frame.
Yeah, that's some good emotion, like, everywhere, and, like, in multiple coordinated ways with this thing. I think it definitely shows off the capabilities of the Gundam, like, very great in this panel.
Alright, next page. Although I'm
Rocket Fist.
gonna refer back to the previous page in this one though, because I realized something while I was writing it. And here we see another thing we haven't seen before from GU. As the Gundam slides down the side of the building, it fires its arm off like a missile as it grabs one of the artillery units and smashes them into the ground with the force of its two jet engines. It also forces me to reconceptualize the last page, as it now occurs to me that the fist was not mounted to the back of the Gundam, but was actually gripping it by the back and using its thrusters like a jetpack to help it get into the air, where it then lets go, mounts onto the arm again, and gets a power boost to fire off at something new. I also appreciate the idea of hands as gun bits. Sort of reminds me of the golden hands from another manhwa called Overgeared.
I definitely have to say, out of all the technologies we've seen in the series, Rocket Fist is definitely the goofiest one, but
Well, because like the first thing it makes me imagine is the boxing glove arrow from
yeah,
Green Arrow and all that shit.
it's goofy, but you gotta respect the trick arrows, you know?
Doesn't XLR do the same thing?
I think so, yeah. I think it also has the same capabilities.
Right.
That one's been a while though, but you know what? I'm down for a good rocket punch every now and then.
Well, chicks dig giant robots. We then see the new Gundam hurl the fist again, clearly slicing through and destroying tanks and artillery with ease. The Gundam is constantly in motion as it controls the arm, directing it where to go with its own motions. like a combination of someone using a motion controller for the first time and that guy from Guardians of the Galaxy movies that controls the arrow via whistling.
Yondu.
Well, it depends on which. Don't spoil, Griff. Don't spoil the Marvel movies.
Excuse me, that character has existed for like 30 years. I don't think there's a spoiler here.
Griff, have you seen the latest Guardians of the Galaxy movies?
I haven't seen number 3 yet, no.
So then you don't know what I'm talking about. So
Nope.
you are
you
potentially spoiling things that you have no idea about.
The guy with the whistling arrow? Yondu.
No, there's more than one, Griff. There's more than one.
Oh, right, that's right. At the end of 2,
I have specifically said not to spoil things. God.
Fine.
You think you'd reacted to shit before. Alright, next page.
No, hold up. I just want to go ahead and draw attention to the stop hammer time pose here. On the 4th panel. And in fact, the pose over here that it has for the first 3, where it's like
Well, no, it's making a different pose in the 2nd panel. That's why I brought up that it's moving its thing around with doing that.
Yeah, we have like our little sort of bowing pose. It's like mid-air with all the gun bits moving, and the stop hammer time pose at the bottom.
No, 2nd panel, on the right-hand side. He's doing this sort of thing.
Yeah, so we've gone like from this to like this again or something. It's definitely moving in a very weird way, don't you think?
No.
Not specifically that the motions are weird, but that it's choosing to do these motions. Because I'd like to think I point out, once we get to the next page, I think we have a very specific pilot in here.
It's a child.
And that these motions are going to indicate who and what.
Well, we know it's I don't know what you're getting at, because my problem here is the reason.
Because Q doesn't move
I'm not saying it's Q. I'm saying that I don't have a problem with it, specifically because Q in GU does this shit all the time. And the chapter that you said didn't mean anything, last chapter, was also a fucking child soldier. So
right. But what I'm saying is we have a third character here. That's what I'm trying to point out.
Well, we know that because this isn't the GU, obviously. Well, I'm not going to say obviously. I may have written down a thought section that I've already forgotten what my points were. But I'm saying that I think it's quite clear. I can't say that either because I might be arguing against you this point later. I think I don't have a problem with it because Q does this shit all the time, where he just uses the mech like it's his body, because he specifically says it makes me bigger. Like, yeah, we've gone over that. So he's constantly, anytime he wants to like gesture at shit, he does this with the GU, like things like that. So this is just more of that.
Right. I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying like because of body language, this is a third character's body language.
I'll wait to the end. I might be debating that at the end.
Okay, so let's just go ahead and see. I think we're on 47 next.
We get another close-up as the fist returns to the arm mount, glowing, presumably from all the destruction and explosions it's been flying through, that, or it's actively crushing something in its fist that is exploding right on this frame.
It's just golden finger, it's fine.
You mean shining finger?
Depends on the translation. Anyway. Again, we see more of this, like, very over-exaggerated, very Dancer-esque body language here, which, seeing it come from Gundam is still very silly. I love it. But it just adds to the pile of, I think this is another person.
Once again, a move that we've seen GU do before. So, I don't think it's... Now I can't tell... Hold on, we're gonna get there. Just 2 more. Okay. Next page. And on our final page, we see that it is, in fact, a flashback to the recording that the chief had. The radio fills with a call for retreat, calling the site of the battle Hell and the Gundam and Infernal. The last panel being the exact shot that Vilda got shown earlier. And I have to wonder now, if the thing at the end of the chapter wasn't in fact Giyu, and that Vilda is chasing after answers as to why they would make a child do such a thing, which would still be a different context to running away from the same people that are chasing after them.
Right. If you're heading forward with like that assumption, I could understand like why you wouldn't think like this is out of the ordinary for Kyu or something. But I think Kyu moves in a different way. And that the person that they're running from is probably the original pilot of the GU.
I'm saying that I do not believe in any of the previous scenes that we've seen Kyu piloting the GU, that the maneuvers that they've been taking, the over exaggerated human as Gundam maneuvers,
Uh-huh.
have been considerably different in any way to say that they're not Kyu specifically. Also, I'm now just leaning on something that the realization that I've hit before that Kyu fell asleep super fast with the term sleep.
Yeah.
That God no, I've lost it. Hold on. That Kyu might not have been a programmed child soldier. That he may have things to set him off, and that he was not the same Kyu that did this. That Vilda kidnapped Kyu to try and save them. And that Kyu has become the Kyu that we know, and that this is a distant memory of what Kyu used to be, the person that Vilda saved them from.
What do you do when your hypnotized soldier persona is really into dancing and you aren't?
I mean, it's one scene of a dance move. Everything else was just wildly gesticulating their arms.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Uh,
don't know. You're like saying that Captain Ginyu was a dancer.
Captain Ginyu dances for sure.
Only in Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Anyway, but yeah, I'm under the impression, of course, that we have three Gundam pilots here. We have Kyu, who we've seen acts like a child in a giant body when they're piloting the GU, right? They're a little bit awkward. They express themselves the same way they express when they're acting normally. They're a little fanciful, but not greatly. They don't really do these dancing maneuvers, is what I think. We have our second Gundam pilot, who's in the one with like the jet turbines, the misters, and they have a very different profile from Kyu, right? You would agree on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they have a
I
different
think
profile, but they look almost nearly
yeah.
identical.
Body language profile, I should say that I mean. The way that they act and move and how they fight is different. And I think like that character even like prefers to be at a distance and just kind of use their bits while they're like busy with arts and crafts. So, but then we have our third profile here, this person who is really into motion, who is very much into like these dances and poses, and is expressing that through the Gundam as they are fighting. That is how they would normally move or operate when they are excited. So we're looking now for a character in the future who really likes to dance.
Well, clarification. You're looking for that person. I
Mhm.
think, again, we have two different suppositions. You're
Yeah, yeah,
saying that it is taken as granted that Profile 3 exists because you don't think that's how Kyu moves. I'll say that Kyu does move fluidly through, say, because I can't remember the name of the place they stole the batteries.
yeah,
That Kyu does move around similarly to this, or at least I think the difference between this gesticulation and sort of dancing motion that you're pointing out is
yeah.
negligible to how Kyu moves. And until I
Right.
get more of this, I guess, I don't see there. I will also point out that I'm not arguing that there's only two pilots. I'm assuming at some point we're going to get like a whole. They're mass producing these kids or something, you know? That's going to be. Also, my basis is founded more on the what did I say before during one of the other reactions? What would be the worst thing in this situation for to happen? And I think the
Yeah.
worst case that has to happen would be that Q is a mass murderer with lots of blood on their hands and not an innocent kid like they believe themselves to be.
I feel like we would be getting different perspective from Vilda, if that were so. Because Vilda is very much of the belief of the innocence of Kiyu here, and is very specifically angry at the abuse of that innocence.
Well, as I said, if Kiyu was like coded, like I don't know, not hypnotized, but has keywords associated with them, or was trained to do this without any knowledge, Vilda would be equally as upset, and might not blame Kiyu for the actions of Kiyu, right? They would blame the adults that made Kiyu. 'Cause Kiyu is just a kid. Kid don't have any idea what they're doing. They might think they're doing good. They might think they're blowing out candles. Shit like that. So I think Vilda can just be confusing us with terminology. Like, I'm running away from a thing. What if that thing I'm running away from turns out to be Q's past and not actually the people trying to kill us?
Right. And I think on that note, I do like this entire chapter. I very much enjoyed the way that they set up like these multiple parallels at the same time. The way that Vilda and Key were trying to help people, and how very specifically the things that they are going to try to help are going to eventually burn out and die. And even drawing that back, of course, to Kiyu. I think like if you're reading this and you're reading casually and you're maybe like not super reading into anything, this chapter is slapping you in the face and going, it's like, Kiyu's going to die. We want you to know before we move on. This is what's happening.
Well, I mean, we're saying that from like the very beginning, so it's not like it's a new thing.
Of course, but they have avoided even here explicitly, very directly mentioning it until like the very end of this chapter, where they're like, you will shut down. And making that you would have to start ignoring stuff to not be aware of it by this point.
New thought. And this is going to go, I don't think you're going to go for this because this leans heavily into my previous theory.
Sure.
What if shut down doesn't mean death? What if the trailer has an override signal being broadcast from it that only broadcasts, say, half a mile? And that Q is being, like, controlled by some outside source. And that if Q leaves the half-mile radius, the broadcast signal that would take them over again would take control, and Q would turn back into old evil Q.
Yeah, that would be absolutely crazy. I am imagining like a reversal of that, even though, where the quote evil one here is actually the GU and whatever personality is in there, a la like Eri.
Well, I mean, we all know that witches are evil.
So if Kiyu walks too far away from the GU's personality reasserts, and then we'll go on a rampage.
Yeah, but we haven't seen any indication that any of the other ones are like Eri, right? None of them have something built in. Even the other one that we saw that was flying around was being actively controlled. Yeah. GU never gets up on its own. We're constantly being shown it just laying there. It never gets up and moves around, or we never see Q talking to it. Like, it's never, oh, so silly, GU. Or, there's never anything like that going on.
Right, I think I would probably specifically point to Prospera being uniquely crazy and in hold of, like, very specific knowledge and how things work.
Well, like I said, all witches are evil. Belmera created a whole
They're
line
just in different ways.
Belmera created a whole line of kids that she sacrificed, so I don't think we're going to turn out with Vilda being the good witch. I know we've all kind of accepted Prospera did what she did for a good reason, but we all also acknowledge that what she did was bad. So...
Oh yeah, you can totally do the wrong thing for totally justifiable reasons, but that doesn't make it any better.
That's what I'm saying. So far, all witches are evil. So,
and all I'm saying is the next time that I get angry, I'm building a Death Star.
I mean, I don't think you'll finish it within your lifetime.
So I think we've covered, like, even our little conspiracy theories about what's going on here. Do we have any last things we want to cover? Any, like, details that, like, stuck out to us? Or do we think that's going to be it? Alright, and I think that's going to be it for the day. This has been Stoneface Reactions, everybody. I'm Griffin. That's Theta, and we'll catch you next time. See you around. Hey everybody, thanks for watching another Stone-Faced Reactions. If you have an idea of another video we could go ahead and watch, go ahead and put it in the comments down below and we'll add it to the wheel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about this video, what parts you liked. And until then, we'll see you next time. Is this too goofy?